to a long-awaited review, at least for me. Although, to be fair, today's book, which is Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson, I think I finished it last week. It just feels like it's taken me a long time, because actually the book that I need to review is Outlander. Yeah, that one, it was a very long read, and as much as I am more productive when I listen to books versus when I sit down with books, my retention is not the same. So it's taking me a very long time to go through the high points of the book. But Lord willing, I will do it this weekend. If not, we'll just see when I get around to it. Anywho, today is Dance of Thieves. And I really enjoyed this book. I was pleasantly surprised. A friend of mine had recommended it, and I did initially start with the second book only because I had put them on hold at the same time, but this one took me a long time to actually get. I had to stop right away because I needed the first one. It threw me into something that I wasn't prepared for. And on that note, I felt a little unprepared for Dance of Thieves because apparently there is another series before this. You can absolutely get through Dance of Thieves without reading that. Whatever, I don't even know what the series is, without reading that first series, because this is sort of like a spin-off of it, like taking characters and expanding their world. I found that there was a lot of things I didn't understand until I went through to make my notes, and I actually was reading certain passages, and then I was like, okay, so all of these questions that I had, thinking that they were never addressed, they were addressed. But because I was listening to it, I obviously didn't absorb that kind of information. So let's get into it. It is essentially, and this was something that I completely missed until I was reading book jacket summaries, and I was like, that's the crux of this novel. A friend recommended it, so I didn't even read the summary. Like, I had no clue what I was getting into. I was just going by her word. But as I was getting into this book, when you read just a straightforward jacket summary, that's not what I was picking up on. But we have two main characters, a girl named Kazi, or Kazi, and then this guy named Jase. Kazi was a street urchin. Her mother had been taken when she was 6, and so she learned to live on her own. They'd been very poor before, but obviously afterwards she's left to fend for herself, and she basically becomes the city's best thief. And this is what earns her the nickname 10, because she was so good that she kept all 10 of her fingers, and the penalty for thievery was to have your fingers or your fingertips cut off. So she's really good, but at some point she encounters the queen, and the queen is from the first series. So there were some things that I felt like I just wasn't getting, because I could tell there was some kind of importance to this woman, but I didn't know what, only because her story was from somewhere else. It doesn't really make a big difference in this novel, but I did feel like I was just missing something. Anyways, the queen was visiting the town that Kazi was living in. Kazi insults her, spits at her, and instead of punishing her, the queen brings her back to the castle and recruits her to be part of this elite guard called the Rattan. Whereas Jase is part of the infamous Ballenger family. They are like a group, a sect. They're not an official kingdom, but apparently they're descendants from the stars or something. That was something I needed more about. There were a lot of great fantastical elements that I love because I love mythology, but I felt, even when I was going through and I was understanding things a bit more, I felt like I was missing the genesis of something. No matter how much Pearson tried to do a recap, it missed a mark for me, and it makes me want to read the first series, but that's neither here nor there. He is the new patriarch of the Ballengers, but when Kazi and a group of her cohorts, their actual mission, which is what I completely missed, is there's a war criminal, a guy named Captain Beaufort. They are sent on a mission to find him. They come to this city called Hell's Mouth because they're under the impression that this is where he's been hiding out. And so he was the guy who instituted essentially this rebellion. He banded together with this other I don't know if he was a ruler or a bigwig, this other really bad dude, and caused a lot of devastation. So now he's guilty of war crimes, and he's been on the run for an odd number of years. So they are trying to seek him out under the guise of investigating treaty violations. And the thing about the Ballengers is they used to own Hell's Mouth, but then one of their ancestors gambled away the city. He gambled it away to another ruler, this guy who is more of a farmer than a real king, but still he is now in control. They are trying to wrest control back. However, that faction that descended from the guy who gambled away this section of land, they are also then trying to wrest control from Jase, who, as I said, is the patriarch in like his direct line, because now they are black sheep. But that guy's name is Paxton. There's a sequel to Dance of Thieves, so I'm assuming we're gonna get more of Paxton, because what we're also seeing, the Ballengers are being framed for things. Kazi and her group of Rattan are under the impression that all of these things, because they're part of people called the Vendans, and so Vendans who are living in this area are being attacked. Their settlements are being burned down. Their livestock is being stolen. And they're under the impression that it's the Ballengers, because the Ballengers claim to kind of be a ruling faction, but they're not an established kingdom. And so they just have a really bad reputation. But over the course of the novel, you get the impression that somebody's framing them. We just don't know who. But anywho, let's get back. So Kazi and her group of friends split up. A couple of them have to go one place, a couple of them have to go the other. She ends up going to Hell's Mouth with Ren and Sonove. They're kind of like scouting things out. They're chatting with a vendor, and we find out that Kazi has this thing for oranges. Of course, she's really never had access to oranges because they are an expensive item, and she's never really had money, even though she's part of the Rattan. So she ends up stealing some oranges for these street urchins, only to be seen by Jase and his cronies, who have spent the entire night drinking, because that is what you do, I guess, when the old patre dies and the new patre is crowned, for lack of a better word. He and his guys come up and approach her, and she's unaware that he's the new patre. She does not know his father has died. So she gets all up in his face and she insults him. Eventually, she overpowers him. They go off. She and her folks are left behind, and they're talking to two Vendans, and they're like, you know who that was, right? And she's like, no. And they're like, that's the new patre. That's the Ballenger patre. And she's like, no. This guy does not align with the description of the person that I know as the patre. And then she remembers this ring he'd been wearing, and she's like, She decides, let me go after this guy. She goes down this alley that he had gone down, only to find him bound and gagged. He has been captured by labor hunters. Labor hunters are the same kind of people that took her mother. They had intended to take her as well, but the mother lied and had hidden her. They're also not allowed around here, or like, period. She tries to stop them, only for them to overtake her as well. Next thing she knows, she wakes up in the back of a wagon, and she is chained and shackled to a host of other people, including Jase. She uses her wits and wiles to steal the key, and this, except that we need this for the plot. I do not understand why she only unlocked their hands and not their feet, because she is shackled to Jase. Whatever the case, the keys are getting passed around, everybody is getting free, and then the driver realizes what's happening. So now it's a race against time, it's a race against him. They are unable to keep hold of the keys, so now they are stuck, shackled together. Jase goes, hey, you know what? I know where we can go. And she's like, well, I guess we're just gonna follow your lead. As they are crossing this terrain, they are realizing that they're at odds with themselves. They are natural enemies. However, they are also naturally attracted to each other. And I struggled with this only because I felt like it was distracting. But then on the opposite side of that, it is sort of what continued to fuel things. So I accepted it, but it also felt a little cliched at times. And I would have preferred, yes, they absolutely acknowledge their attraction towards each other as they're headed to wherever they're headed. But I wish they hadn't acted on anything yet. I wish we'd had a little bit of more of a slow burn, a slow build, because the way they had this love-hate relationship, like they'd be all mad and screaming at each other, and then next thing you know, they're all in each other's arms. It was very confusing for me, and as it says, it was distracting, but I understood the necessity for it. Anyways, they're going along their merry way, come across this desert. They cross this desert, and this was something I still don't understand. It was something that I intentionally made sure that I reread so that I could clarify the significance. There's a lot of like fantasy elements in this novel, so I'm not sure if this instance is something fantastical or if it's really supposed to truly represent flash floods in the desert. But they're on their way, and she notices this dark cloud in the distance. And he's like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what that is. We need to get going. But he never actually explains what it is. But what we're shown is that, yeah, the rain starts to fall and it's coming quick. And if they do not reach high ground fast enough, they are done for. But there seemed to be some kind of otherworldly significance to this rain cloud. It obviously still bothers me because I just don't know what I was supposed to get from it. I don't know where it falls in regards to the reality that Pearson created or the reality that we are familiar with that she has integrated into her world building. They do make it to safety, and then when they finally reach the settlement, Kazi is furious because it turns out that where he had taken her was Tor's Watch, which is his familial home. She is outraged that he would trick her into this, but then at the same time, she's relieved because this is where she wanted to go all along, because this is where she believes Captain Beaufort might be. This is where we meet Paxton, and Paxton is trying to call out Jase, trying to be like, well, where were you when we needed you? Where were you when all this stuff was happening? And you were shirking your responsibility. So in order to save face, he's like, oh yeah, well, I was just doing what my dad told me to do, and I was continuing the family line, so here we go. This is my new romance. Paxton is like, well, what about your ring? And for him to have lost this ring, there have been no going back from it. Somehow Kazi, when she had stolen the keys, had also stolen the ring, and she'd kept it on her. This is when she comes to his rescue, and she's like, oh, well, I still have it, remember? She gives it back, and he is put out because he's like, why did she have my ring this whole time and never told me? When he brings it up to her, she's like, well, I gave it to you when you needed it. And this way of thinking does come into play later, basically to say that she didn't always do things on his timing, but she did it on the right timing, whereas he never did things for her when they should have been done. He just did things for her when it suited him. I didn't really buy the logic, but it was there. His people, so his main guys, he has a massive family. Some of his main guys are Maxon, Gunner. He has a sister named Priya, a sister named Lydia, who is young, and then he has a young brother named Nash, and then a sister named Jelaine, who she comes into play a bit later. Two of his guys had gone after the labor hunters. Well, they tell Kazi that they have her friends. She does not actually believe this because she doesn't think that these guys could actually catch her friends. But then a little bit later, they show up with two bloody ears and one of her friend's weapons. She still doesn't believe that, fully believe that they have her friends. But seeing these ears really does turn her stomach and makes her question things. But it turns out that the guys had tracked down the labor hunters. They killed the main guy, and then they cut off the ears of two other guys as a warning. And what they learn is that these guys had been paid. This was a deliberate attack, and it was a deliberate attack against the Ballengers. I don't remember if the plan was to capture Jase or if that was just pure luck. But this is undermining the Ballenger rule. Two things that we learn about Jase and his family. One is that his father had wanted the queen to come to Tor's Watch to validate their existence. He wanted them to come to him because he's like, we're not bowing down to anybody, but yes, we want her to say, you are legitimate kingdom in your own right. But she had been ignoring all of his letters, and this made him feel slighted. So he made Jase promise that he would get the queen there. This is one thing that Jase wants from Kazi, is he wants her to write a letter to the queen saying, hey, come. She does agree, and this is something necessary but unnecessary. She never learned how to read and write until she became a Rattan, but it's a good thing that they made her learn to read and write because she was able to send a coded message to the queen without anybody knowing. So it'd be like, yeah, come meet our gracious host, when, her language made it very clear that it was anything but. But then before she signs off on this letter, she has her own stipulations. One of those is that she wants the Ballengers to make reparations for the ruined Bendon settlement, the one that had just been burned down. She wanted one more thing, and I can't remember what it is, and apparently I didn't write it down. However, she knows full and well the queen is not gonna come. And for me, this was very intriguing. I feel like the outcome would have been less underwhelming had I read the previous series. But spoiler here, the queen's not coming because she's pregnant. She'd apparently lost her previous pregnancy and, just trying to make sure that this one is a viable pregnancy, so she's too delicate to come. Honestly, it made it sound like she was on her deathbed, or maybe for somebody who had not read the prior series, I didn't even know there was a prior series until I was putting these notes down and I was looking at other people's reviews. I mean, it almost made me think that she was non-compos mentis, like there was something wrong with her and nobody wants anybody else to know. So I was underwhelmed to learn that the whole secret behind her inability to leave the castle is because she was pregnant. Jase agrees to make these reparations, and he ends up going above and beyond what's even asked of him, and so this shows his compassion for people. The other thing that we learn about the Ballengers is they are absolutely positively 100% harboring Captain Beaufort. This was something that I found problematic, and it does, as much as I admire Pearson's world building, I think she did a great job writing this book, creating her characters, creating a world. I found it very difficult to comprehend how Jase and his family would not know the severity of the captain's war crimes. It's because I didn't read the first novel, I don't know how widespread this war had been. When we are in Kazi's perspective, it seems like it was the absolute end of the world. However, she asks Jase about him and he straight up lies to her. He's like, no, I don't know that guy. Like, I've never seen him. Only for him to partnered with Beaufort because Beaufort has promised him two things. And these things are very vague throughout the entire novel, which I was fine with. But it turns out that what he had promised Jase was a cure to some kind of fever that two of Jase's siblings had died from, and weapons. All we know is that Beaufort and whoever his cohorts are coming up with something that would make the Ballengers secure. Like, nobody will mess with them, nobody will question their legitimacy. This will secure their future, and turns out that it's weaponry. Jase is like, we'd heard that he had been in some trouble, and we'd asked him about it, and essentially whatever Beaufort told him was a watered down version of the truth to make himself look good. So then Jase and his people put feelers out, but nobody had anything to say, so he was like, oh, well, these just must be unfounded accusations. And I'm like, if his crimes were as bad as Kazi says, why would nobody back that up? Why would nobody know about Beaufort or say anything about Beaufort? Except that we needed a climax. So that was hard for me to understand how whatever he did could be so bad, but the Ballengers know nothing about it, and nobody is going to say anything about it when asked about it. Anyways, maybe it's just a matter of your business is your business. Your monkey, your problems. Not my monkey, not my circus, or whatever that phrase is. He's been with them for a year working on whatever this is. And of course, the Ballengers are getting a little antsy. They're like, when are we going to see the fruits of your labor, the fruits of our money and our supplies? And this was a comment that I didn't quite understand because I didn't feel like it played into anything. But someone makes a comment about how Beaufort is playing with the ancestors' magic. What does that mean? It turns out is that Beaufort has conspired with a bunch of other fugitives, men who had faked their own deaths, but they're called the Scholars. So I don't know if they're all scholars or what qualifies someone as a scholar. There's only one person that I felt like was truly a scholar. They are banding together, and it's basically subterfuge, where they're using Jase and his family for money, supplies, shelter, all that good stuff. All the while, they are actually double-crossing the Ballengers and are working with somebody else who I'm assuming is that farmer king who owns Hell's Mouth and all the surrounding areas. It's alluded to, it's never actually solidified, which I'm sure is what we're going to get into in the second novel. Is it him behind whoever is trying to undermine the Ballengers? Is it Paxton and that part of the family that's trying to undermine the Ballengers? We don't know. We're just planting seeds here until we get into the next novel. You get the impression that this king might not be as simple as he leads people to believe. He might not just be some farmer guy who doesn't know what's going on, but he's actually quite intelligent, and he's more of a long game kind of person. So if I get to the next one, we'll find out. We have that, and then they go to town. She ends up reuniting with Ren and Sinove, and they come up with this plan because Kazi is there under the pretense of being Jase's guest. And so then what she does is she's like, well, somehow I gotta get my friends in here too without it looking suspicious. So she gets Jase to do the same thing for her friends, and she kind of blackmails him into it. She, to meet with her friends, sneaks away. While that's happening, Jase is meeting with this guy named Garvin. And Garvin is a spy. Garvin is a guy who will shadow people, keep tabs on them, and he is, I think, one of two who have been set to keep tabs on Kazi, because even though she's a guest, she's not a guest, and he has eyes on her all the time, which is one thing that she eventually puts a stop to. She's like, you gotta stop having people follow me. You've got to stop putting these guards at my door. She says something to Jase about this dude that's been following her, maybe about both dudes. And Jase tells Garvin, he's like, she spotted you. He's, no, there's no way. He's like, she totally made you. And Garvin is like, but there's something about her. Like, I know her. I've met her. And the thing with that is her nickname was 10 for a reason. And she had ended up stealing the biggest thing she ever stole, which is kind of why she was recruited to be part of this group of Raton to go find Captain Beaufort, was she'd stolen a tiger. This guy is, so the group of people are known as the Pravisi, and they're the ultimate slave traders, swindlers. Like, they're not a good group of people. They cause more harm than good. This is how he had known her, because they had an encounter when she ended up stealing this tiger. The Pravisi are also the same people who stole her mother, and their trademark is black and white striped canvas. Now Galvin is like, I'm gonna figure out how I know her. Meanwhile, her friends are like, how can he know who you are? You were 10 or whatever the last time. Like, you're unrecognizable. You went from being a child to a grown woman. And she's like, I don't know. I'm kind of wary about this dude. They come back to Tor's watch, and I don't know where this came about. Apparently, Jase had said something about the caves and the tunnels while they were making their way from the labor hunters to Tor's watch. When she is trying to get information out of his sisters on the ride from Tor's watch into town, one of the sisters is like, oh, he told you about that? And she was like, yeah, because she's like, I want to go see this place. The caves, the tunnels, whatever they're called, are where the earliest ancestors of the Ballengers settled. Forgive me if I mess all of this up, but from what I gathered, their ancestors were stars. They were from the heavens in some form or fashion. There was some kind of upheaval, and there was a group called the Remnant, which I think were like the good people. His ancestor, this guy named Aaron, gathered up this little faction of Remnant, which turned out to be mostly children, and he was trying to get them to safety. He ends up being killed on the way to what ends up being Tor's watch, and he leaves them in the hands of his grandson, Grayson. Grayson is only 14, and he is now leading all of these children. They have no food, they have no shelter, they are in basically a foreign land, a foreign universe, is for all intents and purposes, as far as I'm concerned. So they're having to make their way. How in the world they knew where to go? Like, how in the world they knew this was their end destination? I have no clue, because it seems like this is exactly where they needed to be, and it was ready for them, because when she finally does make it into the caves, Jase tells her it was set up for hundreds and only like 24 showed up. So again, those are points that I think were made in the first novel, and this was Pearson's attempts at giving us a very brief overview so we had a basic understanding of why all of this is here, and so that we can continue to play into this bit of the storyline. She wants to go into these tunnels and these caves, and I use them interchangeably. I think they are interchangeable. They're called the caves, but then sometimes some things refer to as the tunnel. Whatever. All I can say is that they're like a work of art. Like, they are way ahead of their time in terms of their making, their manufacturing. And she goes down there only to get bitten by this dog. Like, I guess dogs are not very prevalent in this world that Pearson has come up with. And this type of dog in particular is called an Ashti. It's like a supernatural dog. It's not a regular dog. It's got extra capabilities, and one of those capabilities is its bite is poisonous. So she gets bitten. She comes back. Her friends are trying to take care of her, but they have this dinner to go to. So they get all dolled up, and we have this whole thing about basically getting dolled up. Then they go down, and of course Jase is like, ooh la la, I have hearts in my eyes at how beautiful she looks. They start dancing, and he's like, why are you limping? And she's like, and then she's like, I don't really feel well. And he's like, are you okay? And then he gets her away, and he looks at her leg, and he's like, what happened? He takes her to their healer, and their healer's like, what did you get bit by? And they're all like, you could have died. She doesn't die, but cat's out of the bag. And somehow, nobody really thinks twice about her explanation of being, I mean, Jase sort of does, but about her being in the tunnels by herself. What's concerning to him is that she got far enough to encounter the Ashti, because there's really nothing at that point that she would have any interest in. There's no relevance to her. I thought that was a little questionable, but things are fine. She gets better. It's after this that Jase officially takes her down there, and she's like, oh, well, where's that door lead? He's like, nowhere. Basically, it's just a big circle, like the room we're in, just that's another exit. They go into the rooms, and there's writing all over the walls, and it turns out, so interspersed, like between each chapter, are little excerpts of something from these children. I don't know who these kids are. I don't know where these writings are coming from, but it seems that these must be writings gleaned from the walls of the cave. I don't really know, but then it started to make sense when we got into these caves. I was like, oh, okay, that's how this is all connected. At some point, the kids were running out of fuel, so they were burning anything that would burn, including all the books. One of the last things that Aaron Ballenger had said to Grayson was, you guys have to write everything down. So once they had no more paper, they started writing on the walls, and they started putting their ages and their names with these basic journal entries to keep track of the timelines. She gets a rundown of family history and how these kids ended up there and what's going on. The next order of business is to go rebuild that Venden settlement. And Jase had said, I can only be there for a day. I have all these other responsibilities. And then they get there, and as I said earlier, he goes above and beyond. So first, that farmer king had delegated this plot of land that was clearly Ballenger territory. They had essentially it's this altar they had set up, and it was like right there next to the settlement, so it's kind of encroaching on their territory. But so you don't know, like, was the king stupid enough to have no clue what he was doing, or was he smart enough that this way that he could kind of keep the Ballengers in check? Who knows? So Jase is like, this is a really bad plot of land anyways, so we're gonna move you. Kazi's like, are you sure you can do that? And he's like, dude, this king has no clue what happens. As long as he's getting his money, he has no clue what's going on. So they move them to a better, more fertile area. Not only do they build them bigger, better homes and buildings, but he also pays for or arranges for a tutor to come out to teach these children. Builds, I think he digs a well, and he creates like a root cellar, and he does all these things that she never would have expected him to care to do, like to put thought into, because that really wasn't part of the deal. And so now she's starting to question all the things that she'd heard about the Ballengers, and she's like, maybe what people are saying isn't actually true. We're going to leave it here because I'm at 46 minutes. We'll hop into the rest later. So see you